our DayOne Experts Event. It's about legal challenges and opportunities for digital health innovation. That's the topic of today. Sorry, might not have been turned page. So my name is Thomas Pranzikofer. I'm co-founder of DayOne, and I'm leading the networks and of the events for the DayOne initiative, which is part of the Basel area of business and innovation. And if you want to spread out the news, spread out the information, what is being discussed today through social media, please do so. Feel welcome. This is our hashtag. Please use this hashtag. And so DayOne, this is actually the Healthcare Innovation Initiative, which is managed by Basel Area Business and Innovation, which is the, as the name says, the business and innovation agency of the cantons of Basel-Stadt, Basel-Land, and Jura. DayOne is very much led by these ladies and gentlemen here. This is our core team, coming from the industry, from different stakeholders from the industry, from the healthcare industry, helping us to move our initiative forward. DayOne is also about our partners, the knowledge partners, and a special thanks also to our supporting partners, Arcondis, Soladis, Vossius and Partner, and Silke. And DayOne is also made possible through a special contribution of the canton of Basel-Stadt. What is DayOne? In short, it's about a community, a growing community of what we call healthcare innovators. And this community does not only just come to events and listen, it's also active. We have created together with you in the recent years, in the 5 years that will have been active now, we have created really a strong community that shape together the future of health. And these are our activities. So at the heart is the network, then events such as these expert events as we're having now. And then we pursue with catalyst projects. So that's when we take the one or the other topic one step further and invite to a series of workshops that then should have a clear result, be it a white paper or anything else, projects, of course. And then these projects can be taken one step further in our acceleration program, where we help startups, healthcare innovators, or entrepreneurs to bring their ideas one step further, make them investable. And of course, we also have the foreign direct investment part, so attracting new business to our region here, to our ecosystem, to complement our ecosystem. And all this is done together in the collaborative workspace we have set up just a couple of months ago, 2 months ago, I think it's about now, on the Novartis campus. So Novartis campus has opened its door to third parties, and we're very happy to be there and to have our offices and our collaborative workspaces there. That's what we do as an activity, but what do we do as a topic of the content? What is the idea behind the future of health? Let me walk you through what we have formulated some year ago. So this is the building blocks of the future of health as we see it. And we actually move from inside. That's the patient-centric view of the healthcare as we know it. So it's episodic healthcare. You have a symptom, you go to a doctor, he gives you a diagnosis, and then hopefully you get intervention. But there is more. We expand into what we like to call patient-empowered healthcare. This is all about new technology, especially wearables, mobile phones, whatever is out there, digital technology, which enables us to capture data, which are non-invasive biomarkers, which makes us understand the disease health continuum better, further define different health states, and to have disease monitoring or more self-care possibilities. So actually outside of the classical healthcare as we know it. So that's why we call it a patient-empowered healthcare, because we need the patient here to be engaged in his health. And then we have the outer circle, which we like to call human-centric healthcare, which is all about not becoming a patient in the first place. So it's about smart prevention, it's about risk detection, it's also about integrating data which are not in the strict sense health data. So it could be weather data, it could be mobile data, environmental data, etc., which all fits together to make healthcare preciser and smarter, right? And more personalized. So if you look at it, there are actually 3 dimensions to healthcare innovation. The one is the health data ecosystem. We need to make this data work together. The other one is the scientific space, let's call it, where we have we get a better understanding of how disease evolves by examining or identifying different health states, by knowing better the risks of a person. And thirdly, we will change, or we'll have to change the intervention from going from sick to more healthcare. So not only, let's say, making sick healthy again, but more and more to prevent to becoming sick in the first place. So these are the building blocks as we see for the future of health. And now, as we are dealing with the legal landscape, I have made some thoughts about it. So actually, if you turn back the page 500 years, so that's the time of Paracelsus, known personality, at least for the history of Basel. This is how it looked like, horrible, right? There was no evidence, there was no regulation, just hope, belief, and a lot of suffering, as you see. But still, it was a market, quite a huge market even back then. So now we turn 500 years later. We have the beginning of what we would call the digital health area. Some call it also the digital snake oil, because again, as you see, we have tons, thousands of apps out there. Are they validated? Do they bring evidence that they really work? Some do, some don't. Are they regulated? Yes and no, we don't know, right? So it's needed, it's complicated. Yes, it's not easy to regulate digital health thing. And it's also moving targets, like technology evolves and regulation just always is a step behind of what it could do. So this is the situation we are facing again today. It's not as horrible as 500 years ago, of course, but still we're actually in a new era, and we have to find out how we do this in order to have a safe healthcare situation or market, and of course providers. And from an entrepreneur's or investor's perspective, actually, if you look at it, digital health is sort of the combination of the worst of both worlds. If you take biomedtech, what a lot of people, I guess, also in this call, in this webinar are used to, is characterized by a very strong regulation, but also by a very strong protection. So once you get your thing through, you can be protected and actually through a patent, and actually can get your investments back. The digital is the contrary, I would say. Normally, it's operated in a green field. If you think about Google, Facebook, etc., they don't have a lot of regulation. They never had. And also, they have weak protection. So the most important thing is to be on the market very fast, and most of all, the first. And if you look about digital health, it's sort of both things, but in this strong regulation and weak protection. So that makes it really hard. So if you allow me to go back to these building blocks, where do you have regulation? Where do you have to look at? So one thing is data protection, privacy protection, etc. Also data security, very important. We will talk about that, of course. Secondly, here you have to validate the data. You have to show that this data actually tells us what it should tell or what you claim to tell. So validation is a big topic that then goes into regulation. And then at the end, if you come with a digital intervention or a digital therapeutic or an app, you have to show evidence that it actually works. And it also has to be safe. So these are the areas we will cover. And I'm very happy that for this event, we can partner with Fossios & Partner, who is the co-host of this event. You will hear more from their specialists. They will walk you actually through. That's what we are going to do in the next hour. We will have talks from specialists. We will talk about protection. So how actually can you protect a piece of software? Trademarks, how important are these? How important are designs? Then we will hear from Karin Schulze about the regulatory framework that will be coming up also as of next year. It has to be postponed by because of COVID-19. Then we will hear about data protection and security. That will be done by Monica Mentz from Fossios & Partners. And then at the end, we have invited two young, new entrepreneurs that will tell us their view, how they have been dealing with the legal landscape and how they navigated through the legal landscape in order to get their business model the way it should be. And afterwards, we will have, then it's actually your turn. You will be able to go in different breakout sessions and have a question, Q&A, have a more deep dive into the topics. So one is protect, regulate data, and for its strategy with the entrepreneurs, but we will come back to that and we will tell you how this will be working. And at the end, we will wrap it up and give feedback from the breakout session and a short outlook, and then we will leave the channels open for another half an hour for your sort of networking, online networking. Okay, with this, I would like to now stop sharing my screen and will like to hand over to Brigitte and to Philip from Fossios & Partner for the first speech. Thank you. So I will stop. Please take over. Thank you.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Philippe Marchand. I'm a patent attorney and partner at Fossios & Partner, specializing in mostly biotech, pharma, and with the upcoming inventions in artificial intelligence and software also in this field. I will, as a patent attorney, try to tell you something about how to protect software and in particular artificial intelligence or machine learning approaches using patents. Next slide, please. I hope the screen share works. Yeah, thank you. As you can see, so just the good news first, the patentability requirements that I think everyone is aware of are always the same. Whether it's in the software invention, a chemical molecule, or a biological molecule, a method, whatever, it's always these 5 steps, whether the subject matter is actually patentable, whether there's an industrial applicabilities, whether it can actually be used for an industrial purpose. And then, as I think everyone knows, the claimed invention needs to be novel. This is a photographic approach, so you compare technical features with the prior art, as we will see in a minute. Inventive step, which means that the invention cannot be obvious to the skilled person, and we will also see how this impacts inventions with software. And lastly, enablement, which means that the skilled person needs to be in a position to put the invention into practice. And as you can see on the next slide, the requirements for the patent, whether there's patentable subject matter, are laid out in the European Patent Convention. And in item 1, it's expressed that in all fields of technology, you can file for inventions, and this is the entry point for software, because software or computer science, let's say, is obviously one of all the fields of technology. However, if you look in section 2, you can see that some things are excluded from being patentable subject matter. This includes, for example, mathematical methods. So a simple mathematical approach cannot be patented, can be part of a claim, but cannot be the claim itself. Static creations, business schemes, for example, and also in item C, programs for computers as such, are not patentable. What is important, however, is this as such, which means that the computer program itself cannot be patented, but other methods may be patentable. And as we can see on the next slide, the exclusion of this article that we have seen does not apply to computer programs having a technical character. And what I have copied in here is a claim that I drafted a while ago for Twitter. I think everyone knows Twitter. They have asked us or basically they made an invention and asked us to draft claims for detecting fake news. And actually, I should mention that all the examples are obviously in the public domain, so we don't provide, tell you any secrets here. So you could have found that easily on the internet. So that's a method for detecting fake news in a social media network by a specific approach that comprises determining basically how fast information is spread. And based on the velocity of information spread, it can be detected whether the sharing of a news feed can be realistic, or can be real, or whether it is probably fake news. And this is what this claim is all about. Now you might wonder, well, how is this technical? It's basically in social media, so it doesn't seem very technical if I compare it to a chemical molecule. But the thing is that this method solves a technical problem with a technical purpose, which is, and this is then the exclusion, how a software can be technical, that the processing affects the way a computer operates. So in this case, you could argue that detecting fake news and removing fake news from the Twitter feed can save data space, for example, or can save memory, or increase the speed, or reduce the internet, the amount of data that goes through to the internet connection, and so on. So that it has a technical effect in the real world, and therefore it's technical. As we can see on the next slide, the other requirements. So first of all, so this made them basically software technical. So we met the first threshold. The second one is novelty, as I said, where the invention that is claimed is compared to the state of the art. Here it's important to realize that the state of the art is everything that is made available to the public. This can be in writing, but can also be an oral description. And the relevant date for determining novelty is the date of filing of your patent application. And this, as we can see on the next slide, has a very important impact, because the other requirement is inventive step. So inventive step means that the invention needs to be non-obvious to the skilled person. So the skilled person could not have or should not have come up with the claimed invention in an obvious manner. What does this mean? On the next slide, we see how this is interpreted. So there must be a particular technical effect, and the technical effect needs to go beyond the expectation of the skilled person, which means that the skilled person could, again, cannot have had an incentive to try based on the prior art with a reasonable expectation of success to arrive or to solve the underlying technical problem with the means provided in the claims, which means something in the claim needs to be something that the skilled person would not have considered to put in that claim or to use to solve the technical problem. And that needs to be the case, and then there needs to be a technical effect which goes beyond the expectation of the skilled person, so which is somehow surprising. And therefore, so basically it can be boiled down to you need to set a new world record every time you file a patent application in order to be inventive. On the next slide, we can see the problem, and this is what we will talk about in the breakout session. If you generalize the technology to formulate a generic claim comprising the use of artificial intelligence, machine learning, or software in general, the problem is how can you demonstrate inventive step? If you think about machine learning and you try to solve a technical problem using more and more data and a self-learning approach, then when you file the patent application, that solution is not already there. So there is no technical effect at the time you file the invention, because the technical effect is only generated throughout the use of the software that you propose. And then the problem is that if there are no results, there can also be no surprising effect. and the result itself cannot be claimed without being at least plausible. So what we will discuss in the breakout session is how you can be inventive with an artificial or machine learning approach in a patent application. And this is when I hand over to Brigitte, please.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to attend this webinar. I'm taking over now with another very important IP right when it comes to the field of digital health innovation. It's all about design protection, and we start with an example. Here on this slide, you see an example of a design protected dental implant. So the idea of design right is that design rights protects the shape of an industrial good to defend this shape from other shapes in the same market, to have a right against your competitors in the same field. And now we show how you get your design protection. The requirements for design protection are as follows. First of all, the shape, meaning the external appearance of an object, is protectable as a design if it is novel. And second requirement, if the overall impression differs substantially from existing designs. Furthermore, the design right may not violate the applicable law and morals. That means there will be no protection for sole technical functions, ideas, or concepts. And also the creation of official emblems or symbols is not protectable. Possible fields for the use in the digital health sector are as follows. First of all, graphical user interfaces become more and more important in that field. You see here, as an example, on the left-hand side, an inflation device display screen in use. And on the right-hand side, you see how the design application looked like. So you see the screen is not identical, but the key aspects of that device display screen is protected as a design right. Or as you can see on this slide, this application protects the layout of a screen of a medical device. Same goes for this example. Furthermore, it's also possible to protect with a design right the course of screen design in the use of the application, which is shown by these three pictures that are filed as design rights. As a second very important aspect in the field of digital health is we can mention the apps, as already Thomas mentioned at the very beginning. You can also protect your icons of your mobile apps with design rights. So what is the take-home message concerning design rights? First of all, it's important to see that protection is only granted through registration. Then, the registered design offers protection for everything offered under that sign, so online as well as offline offerings. And the scope of protection is defined by the submitted images and not the factual use of your design. Important to know is that the term of protection is limited to 25 years, but also the design right is quite cheap. Now we turn to a third very important IP right when it comes to digital health innovation. It is the trademark. Also here we start with an example. This figurative trademark you might all know. It's the trademark for the health product Perskindole. And this is a figurative trademark that is protected by a color claim for yellow, orange, red, purple, and blue. And this trademark was filed for products for personal care, pharmaceutical products, and interesting to know, also clothing. Furthermore, trademarks can also be filed in other types. Here, we think it's important to see that you can file trademarks simply as a word mark or as a figurative trademark combining with a logo or with a special look. Now, what are the requirements for trademark protection. Basically, a sign is protectable as a trademark if it is distinctive. That means that it may not be descriptive for the goods or the services that are in question. Furthermore, the sign may not infringe earlier rights, and it may not violate the applicable law. That means signs are not protectable if they are just abbreviations or factual informations, or just very simple signs, like just only letters. So what is the take-home message concerning trademarks? First of all, also protection is only granted through registration, so you have to become active. The scope is defined by the filed sign. And very important, the term of protection is 10 years, but it's renewable without limit. And it's also comparatively cheap. So thank you for your attention. Now I hand over to Karin.
Yes, thank you very much, Philip and Brigitte, for this first, let's say, part of the legal landscape protection. We will now have Karin Schulze giving us insights into the regulation of medical devices area. Thank you, Karin.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody to this seminar. First of all, my name is Karin Schulze. I'm head of medical devices at SFL, a consultancy company, and my background is before I joined SFL beginning of 2018, I was leading a notified body for 17 years. So I'm one of the bad guys in the regulatory framework of medical devices. Or I was one. A few words about SFL. We are a consultancy company based in Basel, and we provide services in a broad field from regulatory affairs via quality and supply chain, medical affairs, medical writing, pharmacovigilance and compliance, market access, public affairs. And the products we cover are life science products like small molecules, biologics, ATMPs, medical devices, IVDs, or combination products, and nanomedicines. I just splitted my speech in different topics. So a few words about digital health and also about the European legislation. What is the status at the moment? Which definitions we have on the market for medical devices, which type of classification exists, also which documents, guidance documents or standards are available, and additional points to be considered, and then also a few take-home messages. So first is the word digital health. I don't know if everybody is aware, but the European Commission has a specific website for digital health or e-health. And there they describe what they understand under digital health. And it refers to tools and services utilizing information and communication technologies to improve the prevention, diagnosis, treatment, monitoring, and management of health and lifestyle. It's very broad, the digital health. So you have the health information technology, as well as digital health services like telehealth or telemedicine. Most of us probably know it here in Switzerland. We have the mobile health, the mobile apps, also wearables, and also personalized medicine. Now, when we go to the European legislation, at the moment we have a situation where we have on one side still the directives, the European directives, which has been transformed or developed to a regulation. A regulation in Europe means that it's explicitly also a national law. There's no need to translate it into national law or regulation, which is the case for the directive. And from the directive perspective, we have at the moment 3 directives. So the Medical Device Directive, the Active Implantable Medical Device Directive, and the Directive for IVDs. So the first 2, the MDD and IMDD, are combined now under the new MDR. And the IVD Diagnostic Directives has been transformed to the IVD regulation. Both regulations were published in May 2017. That's why you see the first digits. 2017 means that this is the year of publication. The transition period for the MDR was, when it was published, was until May 2020. But now, due to COVID, as Thomas mentioned already, there's a postponement of the transition period until May 2021. And for the IVDR, there was always a transition period of 5 years, so it will be in place in May 2022. So at the moment we have 2 legislation, the directive as well as the regulation. Both of them can be applied, both of them can be still certified, but the directives can be certified, or MDD and IMDD can be certified until May 2021. Now, when we have a look on the definition and the classification of medical device software under MDD, there it was already included. So in Article 1 of the MDD, you find the word software with the intended purpose of the software. And the classification under MDD is either a standalone software, can be either Class 2A or 2B product, because it's an active medical device according to the MDD, and the software which drives a device or influences the use of a device falls automatically in the same class of the device. In addition, there was a document or guidance document from the IMDRF, the International Medical Device Regulator Forum, which published a definition, a key definitions for software as medical devices. And then there they distinguish between software in a medical device and software as a medical device. And the software as a medical device is defined as software intended to be used for one or more medical purposes that perform these purposes without being part of the hardware medical device. But this IMDRF document was based on the MDD. Now, coming to the MDR, if it's working. Here you see the definition of a medical device, which also has software already in there. And it clarifies that there should be or must be a medical purpose for the software as well. And either of one of these 4 bullet points where you see it's for a disease, for an injury or disability, or if you have to a physiological or pathological process or state, and also for in vitro examination of specimens derived from the human body. In the IVD regulation in Article 2, you also find the software definition, and there the medical purpose is also related to the scope of an IVD product. Now the question is, what is not defined as a medical device software? So if you have a software, for example, library, a software for libraries, so simple data storage, or a software for simple searches, that's not a medical device software under the definition of the medical device regulation. If it's prognostic but not intended for decision making, or if it is a general health and lifestyle fitness software, then it's not in the scope of the medical device regulation. So it means if you don't have a medical purpose, then it's not a medical device software. And it is also not a medical device if it's not used with humans or human samples. Now, if you have a look on the classification of the medical device software according to MDR, you see in Annex 8, there's the description of, or the definition of the classification rules. software is also deemed to be an active device. That's nothing new compared to the MDD. And also the same as for the Medical Device Directive, if you have several classification rules which apply to the same device, so the highest classification should be applied. Then depending on the purpose or the purpose of the software, there you have now different classifications. If it takes a decision with diagnosis and therapeutic purposes, it's a Class 2A product. But depending on the risk of this of the decision based on the results or the information of the software, it can be a Class 2B or even a Class 3, so the highest risk classification of a medical device. Another purpose of software can be monitoring of physiological processes. That in general, this is a 2A product, but if you measure or monitor vital physiological parameters, then it would be a Class 2B product. All other softwares which are not defined or can be classified or described under the above mentioned criteria, these are Class 1 devices. And a software which drives or influences the use of a medical device, it's the same class as the device. And if the software is independent of any other device, it's classified by its own right. If you have a look on the IVD regulation, there you have also the Annex 8, which describes the classification rules. And here it's very important for IVD manufacturer that they have to have the link, to make the link with the risk classification of the IVD. We have now in the IVD world, we have from the former List A and List B products, now we have 4 risk categories, A, B, C, D, where the lowest risk is A and the highest risk is D. And then depending on the software which is used, you can fall also under a Class D product, which means a notified body assessment is needed. Now, we already mentioned the International Medical Device Regulator Forum. This is the came out of the former Global Harmonization Task Force, the GHTF. Maybe some of you know GHTF documents as well. And for the members of the IMDRF is really broad. We have these are medical device regulators from Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, Europe, Japan, Russia, Singapore, South Korea, and the US. And they published also very good guidance documents for software as medical devices, starting already in 2013, where we had the discussion about the standalone software under the MDD. Risk classification is another good document. And in 2020, they already published a guidance document about cybersecurity. Another guidance document provider is the Medical Device Coordination Group. It was created based on the MDR because MDR asks for the establishment of such a medical device coordination group. And this MDG group provides the advice to the European Commission and also assists the Commission and the member states in order to harmonize the implementation of the medical device regulation or the IVD regulation. Overall, the MDCG group, they have several working groups and they already published 38 documents. And related to software, there are, since 2019, very good documents published, especially for the qualification and classification of software under MDR and IVDR, which is really helpful for everybody, and also a decision tree is in there in order to define which classification of the software can be applied. And also the guidance on the clinical evaluation of medical device software was published beginning of 2020, which is also helpful for each manufacturer. And there are also ongoing guidance documents. They have published a list of documents which will be published. one is expected for the last quarter of this year about the legal status of app providers and also artificial intelligence under MDR, IVDR framework, but there the date is not communicated. Then we have also applicable standards for medical devices, software. So, and if you have a software which will be evaluated or assessed by a notified body, they will go via the standards, either the harmonized standards or a non-harmonized standard. And here you see some of them which are which can be used for the development and also for the validation of a software. Additional aspects to be considered, we heard it already, cybersecurity, when I refer to this guidance document, and there's also a directive on security of network information systems. The GDPR data protection regulation is also very important, and concerning the artificial intelligence, the European Union published different documents and strategy policy papers, which are also helpful to see where it goes, the development of digital health. Take-home messages. One thing I want to indicate for the one manufacturer who already have a product, a software on the market under MDD. So MDD classifies only standalone software as active devices. The classification under the two regulations has changed, and there's a big impact on the product and also on the conformity assessment process. The medical purpose of the device really determines if it qualifies as a medical device software, yes or no. The MDC documents are very helpful, and there's, as I mentioned, a decision tree which helps to classify and to identify if your product is a medical device software. There will be coming up a lot of changes in the classification, and also a lot of new standards will be coming. So take care and have a look on the regulatory intelligence of the development. And also the increasing focus on cybersecurity and artificial intelligence is coming and developing, and also the GDPR, maybe also some specific national legislation needs to be applied. So you have to check also depending on the country where you are located. And just at the end, I want to mention from the MedTech and Pharma Platform Association that we have a virtual annual conferences. And we heard from Thomas at the beginning, in the center of the DayOne activities is the patient centricity. And this is also the title of this virtual conference. And if you like, you can check, and it's a virtual annual conference, and you can participate there. So thank you very much. And now I hand over to Monica.
Thank you, Karin. A lot to think about. We will then go further in the breakout session. And I'm sure there are a lot of questions, but now let's hand over to Monica she will tell us all about data protection and security. Please, Monica.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the handover. I hope you can see my screen. So we have heard that data protection, that GDPR is important, and sorry, I just have to move this, is very important, and also that other legislations might apply when it comes to data protection. So setting the scene, just as a quick reminder, does the general data protection regulation apply only when you have an establishment in the European Union? The answer is no. It certainly applies when you have an establishment in the European Union, but not only. So if you're based in Switzerland and think of offering your services to data subjects in the European Union, that means to actual persons who are in the European Union, no matter what nationality they have, if they are actually in the European Union, even for a short time, then GDPR applies. And it also applies when you do not offer services or goods in the European Union, but you want to monitor the behavior of data subjects in the European Union. So the new Swiss data protection law, which has been agreed upon but is not yet in force, aims to grant the same level of data protection as the general data protection regulation. Does it mean, so if you're based in Switzerland, that in future you only have to comply with the Swiss data protection law? Not really. You have to comply with the Swiss data protection law as well as the GDPR if you want to offer your services in the European Union. One very important question is, in particular when it comes to medical research, medical treatments, is does the general data protection regulation apply to anonymized data? And the short answer is no. But very often I see in contracts or in setups that organizations speak about anonymized data, but the question is, are they really anonymized from a data protection point of view? Because the requirements are very high for having really anonymized data. So just substituting the name with a patient ID is certainly not anonymizing. It's a pseudonymization, but not an anonymization, sorry for these words, which means that the general data protection is still applicable. And when we talk about health data, we do not only have personal data, but we have special categories of personal data. So, and for these special categories of personal data, you have specific requirements. So what you can do with special categories of personal data, health data, is even more restricted than for personal data. If you want to make sure that you can use your data for all sorts of purposes, and you would want to opt for the anonymization techniques, then you need to make sure that you handle the risk of re-identification. And this is a risk-based approach. And you need to quantify the risk of re-identification, taking into account the data environment and also the mitigating measures that you have taken to protect the data from being re-identified. One key part in digital health looking forward is certainly big data analysis, pattern recognition, and even if we look even further than AI, that goes beyond pattern recognition. So the big question is this actually possible under GDPR? You often hear that this is just not possible because GDPR is too restrictive. And the answer is somewhere in between. So the requirements and the restrictions on data analysis, big data analysis, pattern recognition is high, but it's not impossible. So the first question in the health sector that you would have to ask is this covered either by the patient's consent? And there you will have to check the actual wording of the consent, if it allows you to use the data for an additional purpose of big data analysis. So if you set out to use the data in a trial for big data analysis, it's important that it is explicitly stated in this consent. Might be that there's a different legal basis for analysis. So in some countries, or in most countries, scientific research is privileged in some sort, but you need to make sure that it is really restricted to scientific research. So if you want to commercialize the data afterwards, or the results that you have gained from this scientific research, then this is something that needs to be looked into closer. So the reuse of personal data is possible, but only if you have a compatible purpose. And there's a test in Article 6 that tells you what steps you have to take to verify whether the purpose you want to use the data for, although it wasn't included initially in the purpose, might now be usable for the future. Another topic that came up again and again is the question of IT security. So where do we find, actually we have seen that there are recommendations on cybersecurity for medical devices. We've seen that there is recommendations for data security and cybersecurity for in the healthcare sector, but those are recommendations. What are actually the legal requirements that ask you to keep up IT or data security measures? So directly in the GDPR and also in the future in the Swiss Data Protection Act, you have a requirement to take appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect the data. And the level of protection varies very much on the sensitivity of the data that is at stake and the risks that result from the data. So, and you also have to take into account the state of the art of cybersecurity or data protection or data security. And for this, you can refer again to the standards and the recommendations that are out there. Not only GDPR requires those technical and organizational measures for the security of the data processing, but the NIS directive, as we had heard before, also requires certain measurements. So the directive is not directly applicable, but needs to be transposed into national laws, and it has been transposed in all the EU member states into national law. And in these transpositions, there needs to be a part that requires providers of technical infrastructures, critical technical infrastructures, to manage the risks posed to the security of the network of information systems. And again, you will have to take into account the state of the art and the measures of the risks at stake. So if you're planning on a medical device or a tool that uses health data or a new diagnostics method based on data, are you a critical infrastructure? Most likely not. But will you want to provide your services to critical infrastructure, for example, to a hospital? Most likely, yes. So there's no direct obligation to you, but if the critical infrastructure, it is the hospital wants to acquire your services, they only can do so if you have met these requirements. There's also the regulation of medical devices that specifically requires their security measures to be implemented. And last but not least, we had in 2019 the Cybersecurity Act, which again is a regulation in the European Union, which means it doesn't need to be transposed. This Cybersecurity Act had two purposes. One is setting up and enforcing the ENISA, the European Network of Information Security Agency. This agency now has more competencies, and one of the competencies and tasks really set for the European agency is to come up with a European certification scheme for cybersecurity. And medical devices are one part where they think that cybersecurity certification is very important and very much accepted. So they're working on a mutual recognition mechanism, and they will have different level of assurances that are matched by the certification framework. The certification framework is still under development, it's not there yet, and there are some certifications out there already as well, but they don't recognize each other. So we have a gap there. So if you have a certification in the Netherlands, it will not be recognized in Germany, for example. So, and this is going to be patched by the European Cybersecurity Certification Framework. And that is what I wanted to talk right now. In the breakout session, we will look into more detail what kind of data governance models the GDPR has for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Monica. We are perfectly on time. Never happened to me in expert events, but thank you for all for being very precise on that part. So now we will go over and hear from entrepreneurs how they sort of navigated through this landscape of legal requirements by starting a healthcare innovation project. So may I maybe first ask Michel Moller from LifeGen to start with his presentation. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thomas, can you quickly tell me if you see my slide?
Yes, I see your slides.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for the invitation to the DayOne Basel team and Fossius. I was asked to give a quick insight how we as LifeGen handle all those topics, and you have heard now in 1 hour, I think, a lot of information. And it's overwhelming at some point. It's especially when you start a venture, it's like you enter the first time your car and you have to drive the car yourself. There's so many signs and lines everywhere. There's a police that enforce everything and other cars around you. But I want maybe my first message here already is that it's doable. It's good that it's there, and you have to consider it early on, but it's manageable. I have sort of like two parts of my 5 minutes. One part is a little bit background of who we are, because I think it's always depending of what your company or business case is, and also how mature you are, where do you stand in your roadmap, to give you this context, so you get a better feeling. And then of course in the second part I will tell you a little bit how in our journey we encountered those topics. LifeGen is a startup that was founded in 2018 by the 4 guys that you see on the lower left side. We have all different backgrounds, but mostly coming from large pharmaceutical companies. So we were already well aware of those topics. As you can also see here, we are ISO certified, especially mentionable maybe is the 20001, the IT security standard that we've done. You see here also that we already have some clients that we work with. And maybe also mentionable is that at the moment we are 11 people. So each month now we have hired new employees. And maybe also interesting is we started with a colleague who was sort of IT security and compliance expert. He left now, but other than him, no one of us is the expert in the mentioned topics. That's maybe also interesting. What are we doing? This is our topic. Our topic are those personalized high-cost drugs. Where this is a good example here. So Gensma that was published last year when they entered the US market, and they have sort of an agreement. If the therapy does not work in the patient, then they will refund the money back to the health insurance company. And this is what we do. We digitalize this contract between a manufacturer, that might be a large pharmaceutical company, and the payer, which is usually a health insurance company. And if you do that, so you move away from a sort of a price times quantity mechanism, you move away to a data-driven world. So you want to look how well a drug did perform on a patient. You will find those challenges. You already see here some of our selling points. So one of it is data security and compliance, because the alternative is usually, as we see it in the market, is sending Excels around by email. And there's certainly a difference if you then use our platform. We can help you with data access, with digital infrastructure, especially in the hospitals, in developing markets where we're currently active. Of course, our platform should be scalable. We already have some standards, so the big question is, what does it mean it worked well, or what it means it didn't work well? So we have some standard pricing models around that. And one of the key things is actually trust. We are acting as an independent third party between those two very conflicted parties. So just to give you a little bit of better flavor, we digitalize the contract. We then collect all the the relevant data, and we evaluate that and visualize that in our platform. And now, if you think about that, large pharmaceutical companies, large health insurances, especially also very public-driven, or at least in a very publicly driven environment, they work with a startup that has 10 employees. We have access to a lot of very sensitive data. So we know, for instance, the prices of such drugs. We know the prices in different countries, and we do not know the official window prices. If you want, we know the real prices or the discounted prices. We know how well the drug is performing. We even sometimes know the adverse events of such drugs, which is a super delicate topic. And of course, we know from the patients who is behind this data. So it's really that's maybe one of the reasons why I was invited in this event here. This is really sensitive, and you need to handle that accordingly. You know, why they work with us, it's basically one word, it's trust. They trust into us, and this trust, we had to build it up, and you can lose it quickly again, and you probably lose it only once in this world, so you better make the things right. And this is what we've done so far. So we heard some things about trademark. We see ourselves as a very sales-driven company. So one of the first things that we've done is we secured the brand LifeGen in our key markets. I remember when we at the beginning, I think even before foundation, we were thinking about how we should name ourselves. This is a very exciting exercise. We went through this official list. In order to avoid, of course, any wrong name that you then later on have to change. I think this is something that you clearly want to avoid when you start. We had so many great names. Unfortunately, we couldn't choose them. And yet we chose LifeGen, and we secured it accordingly in order that we are not confused in the market with another company. We also heard now a lot about patents, and this is really super difficult. It's maybe one of the most challenging topics here, because of these technical characteristics that Philip mentioned. We also maybe interesting from we have existing investors. They were not such in favor of patenting something. They were rather advising us not to do so. Some others were in favor, because you need to publish it. And the fear was that if you publish something, even though in the end we got the patent, it's difficult to enforce it, because it's difficult to see the other companies, to see into the infrastructure for the companies. So that's why in the end what we now did as a first step, we patented not our key algorithms. We patented something that we think is very important, and also especially related to marketing activities. So the outlay algorithm that we patent is, we found this patent 3 or 4 months ago, is sort of an algorithm that has a check on the data that comes in. And we see that one of the selling points is, of course, that you can assure as much as possible that you work with the right data points, and that's why we thought it's worth to patent this algorithm. Data privacy, I think this is something nowadays you have to consider from the start, especially regarding your product. You must be compliant with this framework, and I think most importantly, your product must be compliant. What we now, of course, do, we also planning to work within the GDPR area. Also, for instance, markets as Brazil, they have regulations that are quite comparable to GDPR. So, of course, now we daily, I would almost say, improving on these aspects to become better regarding data privacy, especially processes, measures, and documentation as a company. There's also then, of course, a very important topic, IT security. This is for us maybe the most important field. which is mentioned on this slide, because if we were losing patient data, I think that would be a disaster, sort of a sudden death for a startup. So in the same time, you cannot allocate everything you have. We're talking about capital and employees time to one topic. You have to do so much more. So I think it should be sort of a risk-based process. And what we did with data privacy and with IT security, we did first with experts. So we had we worked with external experts on these topics. We did a gap analysis. Where are we? What should we do as a next step? Where we want to go? Sort of a roadmap. And we are now continuously improving and closing those gaps. And I think the ISO framework is quite nice because it shows you each tree that is out there. It was an Excel of 1,600 lines, and we had to pick now the first ones that we want to set in place. You also highly driven here by the customers. So we had an initial roadmap, then we had the first vendor checks, and they had all the prioritizations. So I think that's also interesting. If you do these vendor checks from these large corporates, they can also help you a little bit in the prioritization of those topics. That's maybe my final words. I think it's good that we have those guidelines out there, because it's really helpful. You, as a startup, you're always swimming in the ocean. You do something that never has done before. So you're always feeling like swimming in a big ocean. Whatever else we do, there's actually no guideline. We have to figure everything out ourselves. And this is something here I think is good. It's good that you have regulations. You have sort of guidelines that can help you. In the same time, of course, those are market entry barriers. So it's not easy to work in this field. So the better you do it, the better your understanding, I think, is a big advantage against upcoming competitors. And that, of course, has also an effect on valuation. We in the discussions with investors, this is always a topic. As you all know, investors are very paper-driven. They in the due diligence, they have a look at all the documents that you have in place, and it's a must. And I would say even an added value if you do these things right. Again, consider those topics early on. Don't get too crazy. You cannot do all at once. Think about the 1,600 lines in the IT security space. Make good decisions and continuously improve on them. And of course, always align it to the risk, the maturity, and your business case, because any company will have other priorities, and that makes it so complicated, but also so interesting. Thank you for your time and attendance.
Thank you indeed, Michel, for sharing your insights and your journey on this in the legal landscape from your side. You will be back in the breakout session together with Moritz, who he's already here, who will now share his insights from Breathe. And please, Moritz. Hello, Moritz. Maybe your mic is muted. I see you.
Oh,
I can hear you.
yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Better. Okay. Start again. Yeah, I'm Moritz, CEO and co-founder of Hako, the company behind Breathe. We were actually one of the 6 selected startups for this year's DayOne Accelerator, Thomas mentioned in the beginning. And we started working on all of the challenges we discussed in the first hour of today's webinar as part of the accelerator as well. Just to quickly introduce what we're doing, well, the care of parents is the single most important factor for the well-being of children suffering from asthma. So we help parents to better understand and manage that condition. This is just a quick preview of our app we're working on. It includes personalized pollen and air quality forecasts, weekly progress analysis, and assessments. And with the reviews, parents can prepare for upcoming doctor appointments. They can share the data securely with their healthcare professional. So, of course, we are kind of impacted by all 3 topics we've heard about before. And I will just want to go briefly over what that meant, or each topic meant for us. And then, of course, I will be available in the breakout room for more questions. First of all, the General Data Protection Regulation. We actually approached Philip and Monica from Vossius and Partner during the accelerator, and we had one burning question. How can we handle online patient data that's created, accessed, and modified by both parents and healthcare professionals? So our main fear was, if you have a big bucket of data and both sides contribute to that data, if you look at the General Data Protection Regulation, the parent or the child in that case, and represented by the parent, they still have the right to be forgotten, for example, or to have their data removed from our platform, which then creates a problem for the doctor that might rely on that data for the analysis of how the asthma is progressing. And as we discussed that, we've quickly figured out that the answer is not very easy to find. So instead of continuing and diving deeper into the topic, which is fascinating in its own right, we went back a step and looked again at the requirements we had and figured out by talking to parents, for example, that actually the only thing we actually need to do right now is find a way to securely move that data from the parent to the doctor once, and everything else around it would have been very interesting from a technical point of view, but not actually relevant for our initial use case. So what we did, we went back, we looked at what actually was required in our use case, and then changed our plans accordingly to be able to easier or more easily comply with the regulation, which means in our case, only storing data locally and collecting data, I should say, pseudonymized data in the case, only with the, of course, with the consent of the parents, which does not make us not subject to the General Data Protection Regulation, but it makes it far easier as we have no longer this problem that I've outlined before. The second, and this is probably the most important topic, was the most important topic for us at the time, was the medical device regulation. So first of all, we needed to figure out if we were actually working on a medical device or not, because as a newbie in the space, it's not so easy, even with all these guidelines, to be sure about whether you're building a medical device or not. And then the second question would immediately be, should we actually do that? From the product I've shown you before, there were actually several opportunities we could take, either avoiding the regulation or kind of embracing it and distinguishing it ourselves by applying to it. So we sought expert advice, and we also considered the market, because, and this is a topic that is specific for us, if you're doing a medical device, in our case an app, you will almost always have someone in the room that points to Germany and their Digital Care Act, where you can get reimbursed for your app, for your medical app. And as we dove deeper into that topic, we figured out, well, actually, to take advantage of that, you need to be a medical device. So at this point, it was clear for us that this was the route we wanted to go. So we could have avoided it if we wanted and laid out features in a different way and targeting a slightly different problem, or as we did, we embraced it and started working on it quite soon, actually to take advantage of the medical device directive as well. So we need to have it certified by May 2021. Finally, and I see that I'm slightly running out of time already, IP. Philip, as you mentioned before, I had actually had several discussions with him on patents as well. And of course, we were also considering trademarks and protecting our designs. In our case, however, the patents are really difficult, as we've heard before. And so we basically just decided in yeah, basically we decided in order to get to the market more quickly, we would simply ignore it. And I guess that's an option that has not been mentioned today, but we actually chose it to do. And we did that with something I learned from a well-regarded former entrepreneur and now lecturer at MIT, and to which I fully agree. Our asset for us, our startup, is our understanding of the end users. So that's exactly what we are working on and what we're perfecting or trying to perfect. And this must be good enough for us for the moment. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to DayOne team for inviting us. If you have more questions on it, of course, you can talk to me in the breakout room or email me or call me. And of course, if you know anyone suffering with a child suffering from asthma or any other person I should talk to, I'm happy to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michel. So please stop sharing the screen, then I will share my screen. As we are a little bit short of time now. Sorry. Okay, sorry guys. All right. Okay, we all did that, sorry. So we are now in the deep dive, starting a little bit later, so it's already 21. So we have four breakouts. So the first one is protection with Philip and Brigitte. So who is interested in that, please go there. Oh, I just saw the $sign. There is a typo. It's not intentionally there. And then the breakout number 2, regulatory framework. I will join that. And there's, of course, Karin, who knows all the answers to your questions in that breakout. And then we have breakout number 3, data protection security. This will be joined by our colleague Adrian Sprenger from Basel area. And of course, it will be Monica, who knows all the answers to your questions there. Breakout 4, the legal strategy. There it will be joined this one will be joined by Douglas Hagstrom, leader of the DayOne Acceleration. And this is, of course, with Michel and Moritz. So now your question is, first question is, how do you get in those rooms? Actually, it's quite easy. You just have to put the number of the breakout you would like to be in front of your name. And then Stefano will then, our producer of this webinar expert events, will then put you in the room automatically. So there's nothing else to do for you. So you go on the bar and you look, click on participants, you will find your name, and then you can rename yourself. So maybe it's not written rename, maybe it's written more. So you click on that, then you can rename yourself. And then you put just the number in front of your name. So as the example of myself shows you, 2 and then your name, right? And then you can be beamed into the right breakout session. Okay, if you have any questions, just come forth, we will help you. Otherwise, I would now ask you to do that and go into the breakout rooms. Thank you. Okay, so Stefano, I think we will get back on 5:50, so we will have good 25 minutes in the breakouts. Then you can please get us back at that time for the wrap up and the final lookout and the final discussion together with the speakers. Is that okay, Stefano?
Yes, sure. You will also see a timer on the right side, and upper right side, which will show you how long you still have.
Okay.
During the 25 minutes. So there's still a few people which have not chosen where they would like to go. So please do so now that we can start. If not, in the next 30 seconds. If you have problems, I will allocate you, then just stay here and you will stay here. And that will help you out. Okay, then have fun in the breakout sessions. For the ones which are still here, you have not chosen, so please let me know where you would like to go and I can add you manually now. Welcome back, everyone. So in roughly 15 seconds, also the rest will join us back here. So then everyone gets back. Yeah, Doug, you still haven't learned the mute trick, no?
6 months later, I'll learn it. No, we could have had our final part of the conversation. Oh, there's a doctor looking like a real doctor. That's.
So, are we all back? Stefano?
Yes, everyone is back.
Okay, very good. So maybe just a short round now from the breakout rooms. Sorry, here from the breakout rooms. Maybe may I ask Brigitte and Philip to report back what was interesting, just very shortly.
Everything is interesting about patents and trademarks. So what we try to convey is that patents for software can be filed, so you have to be careful about the technical effect, that you can actually demonstrate the technical effect at least in a plausible manner, which is of particular importance when it comes to machine learning, because just inherently machine learning might only come up with the result at a later stage after the patent is filed. So this is tricky. But on the other hand, companies should also file or should consider filing designs. So for example, an app, like a mobile app, can be protected by design rights. So the icon, for example, and also by trademarks when you come up with a very good name that you think can protect your market.
Very good. Thank you, Philip. So breakout number 2, regulatory framework. Karin, what did you find interesting as questions or a short summary?
Yeah, very interesting question. And I heard this several times also in my previous life, I would say, what happens if I classify my product as a medical device, or if I just define it's not a medical device in order to get rid of the regulation and all the obligations. That's one thing which is not really helpful if you declare your device as not to be a device. We had also the discussion about what is the advantage either going first to the US market or to the European Union. What are the pros and cons to go there? We had a discussion about liability issues. Where is the liability if you use a medical device app? And another point was also, what are the criteria if you choose a supplier for software development? What could be the criteria? And maybe also, postponement of medical device regulation, and if the date remains, or if IVDR will also postpone, that's somewhere in Brussels, maybe.
Yes, thank you, Karin. So what I learned is you can't not just auto-define if your app is actually a medical device or no. That is being done by the regulator, and if you don't, and if it is then actually a medical device and you didn't declare it as such, could be tricky, right? So with this, we go on to data protection and security. Monica, a short feedback on that one.
Yeah, we also had a discussion on how to choose your processes, whether there's a checklist for it, what you should be on the lookout for. We also briefly discussed the difference between data protection and data security, and also covered tiny bits of the consequences of the sunk data privacy shield between the US and EU and Switzerland.
Thank you very much. And the last group, may I ask Doc to report back what were sort of the questions,
Sure.
discussions?
Yeah, I think we sort of riffed off a little bit Michelle's comment about learning to drive a car, and the fact that you kind of have to learn to drive your own car. You know, you'll have lots of advice and lots of things, but you have to choose the right thing for you. So you have to choose your right approach depending on what your customers need, what feedback they're giving you. You know, where do you actually want to go, and things. And you have to. That has to be decisions that you make, and you can't just outsource that. But also, you probably don't need, you know, in LifeGen's case, you didn't need 2 experts internally. Like you can develop those skills without lots of high-paid internal people.
Okay, so rather well-paid external people then.
Generate well thought through advice from the ecosystem is the goal.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's true. So also these kind of events, of course, help. We're also open. Maybe one last thing also from my side is that we had Adrian Sprenger here. He's covering our venture mentoring program. So I know if you have an idea or a venture actually going on or wanting to found a startup, then of course you can approach us of Basel area. We're happy to help you at least with the first step. Of course, decisions you have to then make yourself. And of course we have the acceleration, but maybe before I give a short look at what's next on the program with DayOne activities, maybe may I ask Philip, what is your sort of a wrap up? May you as a co-host, Fossius and partner, may you have the last word on this topic.
Yeah, thank you very much. For us, it was very interesting. It is always very interesting to hear about new ideas. And when I start, so I'm not that old, but when I started working in this field in 2012, the artificial intelligence and all this, what we have discussed today, at least from the protection part, was in the very early phase. And what has been developed in the last only 8 years is really impressive. And we also have to develop, the law has to develop. I think that's also a take-home message. Many things are still in the development phase. So also the legislator still has to learn and has to adopt the law to how it is reasonable to either protect those innovations and also regulate the market, and so that it's better for everyone. And we are fascinated to be part of this, and from the legal side, and I think it can also speak for Karin from the regulatory side. So my final words would be to all the participants: if you have questions, you can always contact Adrian, as Thomas has said, for first assessment, and then we as legal consultants, or Karin, would of course be happy to work with you. And we're not that high paid, actually. At least that's what my bank account says. So, so Doug, I cannot. I think at some maybe the first steps can be taken by just reading on the internet and consulting with consultants that are in this huge ecosystem in Basel, and we are also happy to provide advice for free. So the first hour, for example, is always for free when you come to us for a consultancy session. At some point, if you want to actually meet all the requirements, I think then legal consultancy is the only way, because I mean, this is still quite complicated.
Yes, so thank you very much, Philip. So as pointed out at the beginning, I think we all agree that regulation has to be in place somehow. What I also understand is that actually we have to get innovative with this regulation, as things are being shaped up differently, as we are within moving targets, right? We don't know how the technology looks like in 7 years from now. If we just look back, it has done a tremendous development. So I think it's actually, and it's very important to be actually here in the continuous discussion. And of course, we at DayOne will continue this discussion. So here we have a very dense program in the next month. So we will have the DayOne Health Hack coming up. We send out another invitation today. So we have identified 10 patient champions through our partners. We have worked together with them with a consortium of partners and identified challenges, or are now in terms of identifying their challenges, hackable challenge that will then be presented to digital talent that comes to this hackathon. We already have 100 people signed up, which is great. We have space for about 150. If you are interested, if you know someone who could be interested, who really is a hands-on software developer and happy to be involved in the health hack, please spread the news. So it will start with a kickoff on the 23rd, and then we'll have a team building, starting with the team building as of October 26th, and the platform will be open, and the final will be on November 9. This brings me to our next big, let's say, date. That's the DayOne conference. It's a full day healthcare innovation experience. We will have in the morning interesting debates about different topics. Of course, the health hack and the patient-centric. Patient centricity will play a very important role here. We will have all the patient champions there, and we'll look into the challenges, and then have different people in a second session presenting their bright ideas for healthcare innovation. And of course, the open innovation design thinking exercise with 30 project champions that are now applying there for this afternoon open innovation workshop led by Doug and the team. So November 12th, register now, it's open, go to the website of Basel area. And then we will have the DayOne acceleration program starting, which is led by my colleague Doug. So entrepreneurs, watch out, soon to be announced in these days. I can say as much as this. We have, Doc, you correct me, we have 3 topics. So patient centricity is one topic, value-based healthcare is one topic, and diabetes is one topic on this DayOne acceleration program. So please watch out. It's all sort of combined. You will then also apply for the DayOne conference, for the healthcare open innovation workshop, and then you will apply for the DayOne acceleration, a 6 months program. So that's
So the first step is apply for the Open Innovation session of the Day One conference, which is open now. So
yes, that's correct.
Your action for today.
Yeah, the action for the day, or at least look at it. So you find this on baselarea.swiss, and you go on events, then you find all these events there. So with this, I would like to thank you all for being with us. It was a pleasure. Thank you to Vossius Partners. Thank you to all the speakers and the co-moderators for making this DayOne Expert event happen. And I hope we will be back soon with a live event, because now in a live event in a physical setting, we will have some beers and some snacks, but that cannot happen. But still, I will leave the channels open and we can see what sort of happens. I myself will get a glass of water. It's a little bit sad, but I'll get a glass of water and I'll then be back. But let's leave the channels open. Whoever wants to stay and hang around and ask more questions and a little bit of a discussion, please feel free. Others, of course, the official part of this DayOne Experts is with this over. Thank you very much and see you next time.